All right, welcome everyone. This is our Director of Ops combo, also servant leadership, also resilience. Don't really have anything prepared, just more of a conversation. As I was kind of thinking about what to do for this Chalk Talk, you know, there are plenty of ops folks to pull in, but I felt like you had a pretty good assortment with the module. And with my background as an ops person for 6 years, even though it turns out it was a really long time ago now I think about it, I thought I could, you know, talk a little bit to that position and what they do, but also just have a conversation around leadership. So with that said, I'm happy to see your faces. Does anyone have questions for me yet, or do y'all want me to just kind of talk a little bit about the DOBO role? DOBO role? Okay. So when we moved from UNC Charlotte, where I was an assistant coach, to University of Florida, we had a very young staff. At the time, I was 27, an assistant, right? And I was the youngest assistant, but the oldest one was 29, 31. Yeah, so we were pretty young to be going straight to a Power 5 with a 2-year experienced head coach. So long story short, I bumped down to being director of ops, and we hired a former head coach to be an assistant just to kind of help our staff with that experience piece. And so kind of the plan was always to get back into coaching. But I'll tell you what, like the director of ops position is pretty sweet. You get your fix as being part of the team. You're in the locker room, you're on the trips, you're in the meetings, right? But you're also not spending X number of hours on the road recruiting, X number of hours on the phone talking with 15 to 18-year-olds, which is the fun part, right? If recruiting was just talking to 15, 18-year-olds, fantastic, but it's not. You also have to talk to their parents and their coaches and everybody else around them. And that's, you know, I enjoyed for those 6 years being able to like go to weddings and family vacations and things like that, because my July wasn't eaten up by recruiting. And so, you know, the way I describe the director of ops role is basically everything you don't see, right? You go to a game, the game's being played, the players have uniforms, everybody's there on time, the referees are there, the opponent knew what time and place to be, right? So the DOBO kind of makes all those things happen. So when I was at Florida, I was in charge of our scheduling. That's everything from games in our non-conference. So usually, and I couldn't tell you now, but usually you have about a 30-game season, might be 32 now. You always have to block off a portion for conference, which is going to be set by your conference, but you're always responsible for about 12 to 13 games on your own. Obviously, you have a budget for that. You can pay some teams to come and play you, right? They call those guarantee games. Sometimes they're not so guaranteed. Like don't schedule App State if you're a D1 football program, okay? But putting the schedule together, game times, referees, all that stuff, working really closely with operations and facilities to coordinate those kinds of things. So that was a big chunk, working closely with the head coach to, you know, put together the schedule that he or she may want. Obviously, you know, it changes, right? Like if you're at a Power 5 and you're going to have an 18-game schedule of playing SEC, ACC, Big Ten games, your non-conference is going to look a little bit different. You want to feel prepared, right? But you also want some games that hopefully build confidence as well. If you're at a UNC Charlotte and you're looking for games that, like, if you're top 1 through 3 and you're on a bubble, you want some of those non-conference games, right, to kind of put you over the edge, right? So just a little tidbit about that. Other responsibilities: practice scheduling, making sure practice guys are there, ordering equipment. At Florida, our budget with Nike was $80,000. That was just for women's basketball. So it was a massive order. Lots of spreadsheets, kind of fun. Like that was kind of the thing I liked about the DOBO spot, was like you kind of do like logistics, right? You got to pick the restaurants when you traveled. Sometimes that also backfired because just to go to TGI Fridays or Olive Garden. But don't experiment too much with the food, or the players will be mad at you. But anyway, but the equipment also fun, you know, getting to meet with Nike reps, getting to see what was going to be available. But a big undertaking, shoes all the way down to practice jerseys to spandex and sports bras. Another big one, camp was another big one. So overseeing our summer camps, team camps, individual, elite, 1-day camps, 2-day camps. A lot of stuff changed with camps when the Jerry Sandusky case came to light, kind of ruined a lot of things. I don't know if y'all went to camps as kids, but when you got to stay overnight in the dorms, you know, you're away from your parents, kind of felt like a big kid. That doesn't happen anymore unless you're in high school age. And camps also are now more of a big business, depending on where you are. A lot of schools, more people have their hand in the cookie jar with camps. When we were at Charlotte, we used to be able to run a camp and make thousands of dollars just on the concession stand alone, right? Because we buy our own shirts and then sell them, go to Sam's, right? But now, like at Florida, we ran camps, and then the Gator Sports Shop had to come over and run our gear, and they got a percentage. The catering company provided all of the food and snacks and drinks for the concession stand. They got a percentage, right? So camp changed a lot. Trying to think of other big things. That's a lot. Do you have questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
What do you think that the future of the director of operations role is going to entail? Like, do you think anything's going to change as we go forward?
Yeah, I think, you know, depending on what level you're at, right? A lot of Power Fives now have these, every position seems to have an assistant now, like the staffs are growing. I think a lot of stuff though falls first on the director of ops until it becomes too much when they create a new position. So I could see like kind of what's happening right now is you have a director of ops, well then you have an assistant director of ops. And also a lot of the ops positions are now considered assistant ADs, right? So it used to be kind of back in the day, to get your foot in the door, you became a GA. Then to get your foot in the door, you became the non-recruiting third assistant. Then to get your foot in the door, you became a director of ops, right? To get into coaching. Now you're starting to see that there are people who just want to be administrators, but love the game, right? And so you see director of ops, people who are never, ever going to coach because they want to. And so it's becoming more of a path or a stepping stone to senior women's administrator, you know, boosters, like just more administrative type work. So I think we're seeing that change. I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting with name, image, likeness, kind of who's going to be responsible for each team. I know that you're going to have, you know, every university is kind of designing it differently right now. I think at Clemson, it's kind of falling student athlete development, student services. But if there's going to need oversight per team, I could see that becoming a director of ops person, because they're the person that tracks the hours, reports them, uploads them into the CARA logs, which is the NCAA's way of making sure you're not taking advantage of student athletes' time and you're following the rules that way. So I could see that happening too.
Jenna, I'm at Coastal now and we don't have a director of ops, so the assistants do most of the stuff. Have you ever experienced like being an assistant, kind of taking on the director of ops role, and kind of how have you handled it or known people that have handled it?
Yeah, my first job was at Francis Marion, not far from you, Division II. And in that job, I was the only assistant coach. I was an academic. I registered every student athlete for classes. I did the travel. I did video exchange. I drove the bus. I taught racquetball. So yeah, I've experienced that. That was almost 20 years ago. So I think that my advice to someone is awesome. Congratulations. I think first see it as like a competitive advantage for yourself. As when you're taking the next step, you're going to have a much stronger, diverse skill set than maybe the person that you're going up against. And so I would just use it to your advantage. I would use it as a way to connect with your team, because you are the person picking out the equipment, and all athletes care about the swag, right? And then you're picking out the restaurants, like, hey guys, where do y'all think we should go? I'm gonna give you 3 options. You tell me what you want. So use it as a way to cultivate those relationships that maybe as a coach or the coach part of you couldn't necessarily. So, and also that administrative side, get to know your administrators at your school, because the administrators talk. And I can tell you right now, we left Charlotte and 2 coaches removed. They were looking to hire someone. And Amanda called Charlotte's administrator and said, hey, so-and-so's really interested. And they're like, oh, well, we know she did a really good job coaching, but we don't feel like we got to know her at all while she was here. So you never know when an administrator is going to pop up somewhere else, or if you're going to want to come back to Coastal as like a head coach or something else down the road. So I would use those job responsibilities to make those connections. What else, guys? You can also ask questions about any of the theories that you've been learning about or enjoying them, have questions, thoughts that popped up. It just doesn't have to be strictly about ops. Hey, Josh.
So I have a question here. So how would you get into being the director of operations from, say, I'm a high school coach. So being a high school coach to the college and getting this stuff like that, I don't just get to go out and say, hey, I don't just get to go hang out at colleges all day when I'm teaching classes all day. Does that make sense? How's one way that one person from high school to get to that point?
Yeah. No, that's the $1 million question, right? It's like how you get your foot in the door. And I think networking is huge. I think working camps is huge. If you can get yourself, camp is where you can showcase your talent as a coach. And that doesn't necessarily mean you're just auditioning for an opening as a coach, right? Like a lot of times folks have, and I will say head coaches do structure their staffs differently. Some coaches want a DOBO, or I say DOBO just because that's what I was. Some people want an ops person that's strictly ops, right? That maybe they're a nurturing, maternal, fraternal kind of figure. They just strictly take care of the logistics. And some people want someone that has a little bit of sport background or knowledge. So I think that's an important thing to know, but I'd say go to camps, right? I would say, Jack, you're in Lubbock, right? Not anymore. Not anymore.
No.
Okay.
I was in Lubbock though.
Yeah. If there's a Division II, if there's a school, any kind of school that's got athletics around you, see if they need a volunteer for a football game or baseball game, like go and like work the game, right? And just have conversations. That's the biggest thing about college athletics is who do you know and who's going to say your name to other people. And so the more you can get yourself in front of people, the better. Obviously, y'all are all go-getters because you're getting a master's while you're working full-time or GAing full-time. And so I would just try and get your name in front of people as much as you can. So you kind of start developing that network a little bit. For me, I got hired at Francis Marion by a woman who recruited me. I didn't go to her school. I got hired at Charlotte by another woman who recruited me. I didn't go to her school. And so even if you make kind of like what I was talking with Samantha about those administrators, even if like you make a connection with someone, that person, the connection's there, but the relevance of it might not be there just yet. So maintaining those relationships are really good. So thinking back to when you were in Lubbock, who were maybe some key players? Have you kept in touch with them? Are you checking in, keeping your name in on their mind? Because it's, we left for Florida in 2007. And obviously I'm not in athletics coaching athletics anymore, but, Amanda took a year off after Florida after getting fired, came back to Clemson in 18. It all runs together. Yeah, 18. all the same high school coaches and AU coaches are in South and North Carolina, the same ones that were there 10 years ago, right? And so like, thank goodness, well, at Florida, Amanda had done a great job of maintaining those contacts and those relationships the whole time. So you never know when that relationship's going to be the one you need. You want to hear horror stories? Okay, I have two, I can tell you. The first one, we were playing, I was at Charlotte, and why was I doing that? I was an assistant coach at Charlotte, but why was I doing travel? Maybe I just wanted it, and why, I don't know. But anyway, I was in charge of travel because we had a DOBO. But anyway, I booked the wrong hotel, and we pulled up to this really nice hotel in Fort Worth. We're playing Texas TCU. Pull up, everybody unloads their stuff, everybody's in the lobby waiting for me to come back with the keys, right, and all the size, and when they find out they're not rooming with their best friend. And I get to the front desk and they're like, yeah, we don't have a reservation for you. I was like, I just called you though, and you said everything was okay. They're like, oh, well, there's a hotel with a similar name, and it's over here by the vacated lot with barbed wire around the top of the fence. So that happened. And then the other one was actually at Charlotte, we were playing in Florida's tournament, and I was in charge of getting the lineup in, and I lost track of time. You have to get it in 10 minutes before tip, or otherwise you get technical. We got a technical. And so I made sure that that was in, like, I didn't 30 minutes, 20 minutes, like what's the big deal, right? Like our starting lineup's going to be our starting lineup. So I didn't mess around with that anymore. And I also doubled and triple checked hotels with MapQuest probably that long ago and everything. So those are my top two horror stories. So yeah, not fun. Not pleasant conversations with your boss. So what else, y'all? Anybody want to talk leadership? Are we liking servant leadership? Are we liking resilience? They're two of my faves. Let's see, what else have y'all? What else have y'all learned about? I know we're getting into the good ones right now. I know authentic leadership's next module. What's been anybody's favorite so far? Situational, team, transformational is a good one. Followership, complex, adaptive. Anybody had a favorite?
Servant's been mine. That's my big thing has always been servant leadership. Everywhere I have on my desk is a Bible verse. The greatest among you must be a servant first. So it's big for me. So I'm enjoying every bit of it.
What does that look like on you, Jack? Like, how do you think you go out and perform as a servant leader?
I take care of all the stuff that needs to be done other than mine. So for example, I'm coaching the O-line here. So if I need to go do something for the defensive line, once mine is complete, I go help them and take care of that. It's not just for me, it's making sure everyone around me is taken care of, not just myself. Because in overall, it's a team. Once one part of the team works, the whole team works. I mean, we're places where guys hate each other and they don't want to help each other out. And that's not me. I feel that you're in this profession, or I'm in the profession for the kids, and whatever makes the kids look so much better, they play better and they'll build relationships and they'll go through brick walls. So kid needs a pair of socks. I'm going to give him a pair of socks that I have in my bag. That's just how I've always been. I feel like you got to take care of others in order for them to get the best out of them, because you can't get the best out of a kid if he's not confident in their abilities. So.
It's kind of like that Maya Angelou quote. Forget what you said, forget what you did, but people never forget how you made them feel.
Yes,
That's kind of like what I'm hearing from you.
yes, exactly.
Jalen put a question. You think the whole who do you when breaking into others helpful or hurtful? Use the likelihood of getting a quality team member. Can everyone see Jalen's question in the chat? So I think it's hurtful. That's would be my initial reaction to that. I do think that beyond the whole, it's who you know, it's also, it goes to who do you trust? And again, comes back to networking and who you know, right? And so I know a lot of coaches that have been burned when they've like taken a chance on someone, right? And so they'll never hire someone they don't know, or at least someone that they don't know through someone that they trust, right? So do I think a lot of great people get overlooked a lot of times? Absolutely. Do I think it's right or fair? No, but I honestly don't believe fairness exists in our world. So I don't have a really good answer to that. That's just my 2 cents. I think that, when you go about building the relationships, you want to be someone that's trustworthy, but also start that relationship by being trust willing and being the one who's going to extend the trust. And so for you need to figure out like, what are those trust behaviors for you? How can you go about doing that? Because as the intensity around college athletics with scandals and you're hearing reports, I mean, look at the women's soccer, right? And then I think some of you looked at, those 4 scenarios I gave you, and every one of those trusts was broken, right? In your last discussion board. And so I think as we start to see this happen more and more, you're going to see leaders really tighten their circle and it be with people that they feel confident they can go into battle with. So I know that's not like helpful or inspiring or encouraging, but it also just is the way that it is. But I think that the other thing too is, and I know for trainers, camp's an option for y'all as well. Like I've had a couple coaches call me just in this region, say, hey, I need a trainer for a 5-day camp, being ready to like be inconvenienced for those 4 or 5 days and just go do that. Right. So I think the wider, the more connections you can make, and in those connections, trust, follow up, cultivate, the better off you're going to be. Don't go work a head coach's camp for 5 days and not ever talk to that head coach again. And also the head coach probably has 3 assistants that are going to be head coaches. So making sure you're keeping in touch, making personal touches with them at the camp and then following up as well.
I think it would take to like make a program trust willing again, like even if they've been burned by a person that they hired that wasn't so good. Do you think it's like more pressure from their higher ups, or it's actually within themselves to stop being trusting?
I think it's within themselves. I think it also depends on where the head coach is at in their career, in their contract, and the status of the program. As those 3 things would probably influence more of the administration's involvement, in my opinion, and based on kind of what I've seen. You've seen a lot of coaches who something's just not quite right. Like they keep having a lot of turnover in their staff and their players, but they keep their job for some reason, and it's just like. But I think that's a great point. I think it does have a lot to do with administration. I think it does have to do with program oversight, and being led really well, and definitely have experienced administration that does a really good job of leading and connecting, and then ones that don't. And I think a dividing factor of that is how they treat people and how good they are at connecting with people and getting to know people. How much, or maybe not even a skill set, but just how important is that to them? So. What else, guys?
I really like the situational approach. Reading that one, I don't know, I think I talk to people very differently depending on who they are when I coach and kind of how I go about things. Whether it's delegating, whether it's being more directive, whether it's being more kind to maybe a freshman that is like lost mentally, but like they're not giving me it like effort wise. Like I would talk to them differently than I would talk to maybe a senior that knows the concepts of a defense versus and just not giving the effort. I think my dad was a coach. He's been a coach forever, and he really taught us that having 3 girls and then only coaching girls sports, he knows what it takes. So I've really like taken a lot from him as like a male role model who worked in female sports, because I think that's hard to find nowadays. And especially with Title IX stuff, which is a whole nother topic. But yeah, situational approach, I loved that. I like flew through that chapter. I was like, I liked reading about how I use some of those things now and how I can use some of them.
First of all for the good guys being in women's sports, all for the good guys. The not good guys, see ya. But that's awesome that you have your dad. And I'm really glad that you found it helpful, or hopefully through the course. And I think the Nordhaus book is pretty straightforward, and I'm glad you're having some light bulb moments, because I do think the days of like, just treat everybody the same, like I grew up in Alabama, and like the glory of Bear Bryant, glory days, he treated every player the same. You don't get to do that anymore, right? And so hopefully what this class is helping you with is showing you different styles to communicate, different ways to motivate more effectively. So, and I would definitely say, yes, situational leadership. If you have a team of a bunch of freshmen, that looks a certain way. If you have a team of a bunch of seniors, that looks a certain way. It's kind of like when we're talking to my 4-year-old and I'm talking to our 1-year-old, I wish that was more often, but anyway, well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that, Sam. What else? I'm gathering from this that I need to either tell y'all to come with questions, or I need to have like some stuff prepared. Is that what is this my feedback? Eliza said yes. Okay. Oops. Josh, situational is super interesting to me. It seems like it applies in more scenarios when not, and especially in workplaces where things are changing constantly and different approaches need to be taken to solve the problems. I myself have the concept of servant leader, someone who won't tell anyone below them to do anything. Seems absurd. Okay. Yeah, a lot of people tend to connect with the servant leadership theory. A lot of people tend to connect with transformational and also authentic. And I do think there's a lot of overlap there. I have a question for y'all. Where do you think charisma lands when it comes to being a good leader?
Well, from personal experience, I went to Notre Dame, so Mike Bray has been there forever, and they haven't done the greatest of jobs with winning. Like our winning percentage hasn't been great in the past couple of years, but his charisma and his presence is so loved, so that's why so many people still they still get top recruits, and he's still a coach there. And I do think charisma plays into a leadership role. It can get taken too far sometimes. I think sometimes people very love on themselves a little bit too much within a charisma, like if they have charismatic nature. But I've seen it, like he's a great guy. Like my dad would come to campus and go to basketball practice, and I'm a lacrosse player. So, I mean, he obviously has a way with people. And I think that's important, especially even in a servant leader position. Like if you're giving back, if you have good charisma and good connections with people, you can make a bigger difference on a platform than maybe someone who's a little bit more closed off.
I think the coaches at Notre Dame all benefit from being at Notre Dame. First of all, like that's a brand like in itself. Not to take anything away from Coach Bray, but I also do wonder too, the charisma part, like how much does that tie into fundraising, and how much is he responsible for? And does that charisma benefit the fundraising arm of the athletic department more or just as much as it does the team, right, of the program? So just, that was kind of, as you were talking, that was the thought that popped in my mind. Who else? Charisma. And I'm going to tell you where this is coming from. When I drive, I love to listen to true crime things. I'm currently listening to like a 7-part one about this doctor that just, I'm pretty sure is just gonna have everybody fooled. But everyone that meets him describes him as this charismatic, comes in, owns the room, smooth, like confident. And he's made a woman fall in love with him, and he's already married, and he's killing people in the operating room. So charisma has propelled him perhaps a bit, and some other stuff, but maybe has gotten him into some rooms he otherwise wouldn't have been in. So charisma, what do we think?
I heard of that same podcast, Dr. Death.
Season 3.
Yeah, I didn't finish it, but I started listening to it on drives. But yes, charisma. It's like the whole debate is a leader born or they made, and I think charisma is how you treat people and how you treat people. So like I here at school, I walk in and I smile and wave at everybody or say good morning or fist bump everybody I come in contact with. For some, it might be the best part of their day. It might be the worst part of their day. Say, who's this big ugly dude giving me a fist bump every day? But to me, it could be the fact that it's just, I'd want that, just a pick me up every now and then. And I think charisma is just a natural thing that it just brings energy to a dark room. And I always tell the kids here, be the light of someone's day. Just smile at them, say hi to them, ask them how they're doing. Just bring natural positive energy. And that, I think charisma, that's where it comes from. But the Dr. Death thing, how you treat people. He treated people well, but in the operating room is a different story. Did you listen to the one before that? The one that happened in the DFW? Yeah, I
listened to season 1. I'm on season 3 now. I have not listened to season 2, but I'm sure there's a pattern.
That one was 20 minutes away from where I live. So
crazy. Obviously there's other stuff going on, right? Like institutional cover up and reputation and things like that. But for the individual, right, that personality trait carried them. So any other thoughts or any?
Yeah, I actually have something. I think like with what you guys are saying, and a kind of theme that I'm seeing is charisma direct or indirectly ties to trust. So, if somebody's charismatic, people are going to be more drawn to them. They're going to want to be around them, and somehow that translates into trust. So like you're saying, like with the Dr. Death and just like serial killers in general, so many people say like, oh my God, he was so charismatic. And so you didn't think that these terrible things could happen. I think that can be the same with leadership positions, is that if you are charismatic, it can cover up maybe some things that need to have some light shown onto them.
So I'm going to start advertising this class as take the leadership class. We're going to talk about serial killers as charismatic leaders. So to me, Eliza, in hearing that, I think when I meet someone that is like, comes in, is immediately just like on, working a room, telling, like, that gives me pause. And I'll be honest, like maybe, I'm just the old lady on the chat, but that's given me pause to do a little bit more homework and give that person a little bit more time to see the motivator, the intention behind the charisma. Like, is this authentic energy? Is this person just extremely extroverted? Like, I kind of want to know. And so we talked about trust willing, trustworthy. To me, that's going to pause my trust willingness a little bit, because I'm also very leery of people who like do this, because they probably do this too when you're not around, and what's in their memory bank to share, right? So, but my wife's an extremely charismatic person. but it comes from a really good place and she just can't help herself, right? So I think there's just a little more homework to do. Like that's my take based on my experience. So
I think there are maybe two levels of being charismatic, like being charismatic in the way that you can work a room like what you're talking about, and then charismatic in the way of being very intentional and meaningful, like your wife. And I think the second one is probably the most powerful one, especially in a coaching position or in any sort of leadership role, because I think it really hones in on people's desire to be understood and heard. And if you're someone who can come beside someone and make them feel seen and supported genuinely, I think, the right person with the right crowd, if they have an ability to do that, they can probably convince them that the sky is purple. Because kind of going off that whole thing of like, not to go back to the darkness of like serial killers and murder, but like Hitler wasn't a good person, but he commanded thousands just off of his charisma and making people feel like he heard their problems and their woes and cared about them genuinely. So, if that makes sense.
I think it does. I mean, I think there are a lot of charismatic leaders that are super at what they do. I think where we could kind of get ourselves in trouble is A, not doing a little bit more research, but then B, like kind of probably got read about in the traits chapter, right? I kind of struggle with traits leadership. I struggle with personality, based leadership, all that kind of stuff, because I think that really just pigeonholes a lot of people as leaders. But I think that the person that walks into a room and can dominate and take over can be an exceptional leader, but also the person that walks in the room and immediately posts up in the corner and is a wallflower and is an observer first can also be a very effective leader, right? So I think part of the problem with charisma is that you have to have it to lead. No, you can lead incredibly awkwardly as well, right? So I think that's gonna, but kind of talking to your point, Jalen, with two different kinds, but also what do we need to take away when we're talking about charisma as a leader? So we can't discount all the people who aren't charismatic as leaders, right? What else, y'all? What do y'all think about resilience? And we don't have to stay on here the whole hour. So any thoughts on resilience? It's a really catchy word. At Clemson, we call it grit, right? So grind it out, right? That's another big thing. So does anybody have any questions? And we can wrap up. Is everybody good? Any other director of ops kind of stuff? I'm trying to think of, it's a really great career choice. And there are more and more opportunities for career advancement through the ops position. And it's also nice because what I said, you get all the cool stuff as if you were an assistant coach, but you also get a little more free time. You get a little bit more balance. And you also get to build a relationship with the athletes that could be a little bit more challenging as a coach, right? Or it could be different, I would say, as a coach. So there's my 2 cents. If everybody's good, we can say goodbye. Appreciate everybody hopping on here. If you need me, you know where to find me. I'm going to be sending out an announcement that if y'all want to have Zoom chats about the research, LTP part 3, as it pertains to your questions, so we can make that happen. I just want y'all to get off the right foot with LTP 3 because that's a really big chunk of the project. So I think that announcement's going out tomorrow. So if your group wants that, just let me know.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jenna.
All right, y'all. Talk to you later. Tell your friends leaderships about serial killers. Bye.